Shadrach Miti, KTN News.
All right, and now in studio, I want to have a conversation with the State House spokesperson, Manoah Esipisu, with regard to that repeat presidential election and the State House take on the state of the nation as is. Many thanks for joining me this evening. Let's just begin by your take of the election as has been. Many people did not want this repeat presidential election to take place, saying that many measures were not really in place. And as you have seen it now, are you satisfied?
Well, I wouldn't say many people did not want the election to take place. I would say that NASA did not want the opposition to take place. The election to take place. And it's not like they did not want this election to take place in June. As early as March, they were talking about things that would preclude an election from happening. But you know something? The constitution of this country clearly sets out how things are to be done, sets out dates for elections. It sets out what has to be done if an annulment has happened. And what we have seen in the fresh election is the triumph of the Kenyan constitution and the triumph of the Kenyan people. So to the extent that some people called for an election boycott, but an election happened and millions voted, that's a triumph for the Kenyan people.
You speak of millions having voted, and we've seen various numbers. Various media houses are reporting different numbers, and the IEBC is yet to give a clear number on the turnout. But it wasn't good. What does it speak of? You went out for all these days for campaigns, maybe did not get the 8 million that you would have wished to get from as was in the first election. What are your numbers? Do you have your independent numbers?
I think two things are important to note. One is that the IEBC will declare the winner of this election, and it will declare what the numbers are on the final day. Mm-hmm. But what we must say is that at every polling center, there is a form that is filled after the election. So it is a matter of public knowledge for people that are coming from the constituencies what the numbers are. And to the extent that we know at the moment, President Kenyatta has numbers that suggest that with just under 40% of the people voting this time as compared to August, he has already got more votes than Mr. Odinga got with 77% of the country voting. So clearly the numbers aren't an issue here.
But what would this mean for the presidency? Let's take a look at 2013, when you won and got into the presidency, got into State House. The president spoke of uniting the country, and back then the margin for the win was just 800,000. We still see a very divided Kenya, politically, ethnically. What would be the way forward in uniting a clearly divided nation?
Sharon, elections are divisive. Elections are about policy. They are about what each ticket has offered the Kenyan people. In the August elections, the Jubilee ticket offered a clear manifesto of clear deliverables. And the result was that if you look at the completeness of the election, the Senate is by far dominated by Jubilee. The National Assembly is dominated by Jubilee. The governors were predominantly Jubilee. The point is the Kenyan people chose a clear policy that they want to go in direction. And to the extent that that point has been made, it means that there's clarity in terms of where you want to go. Now, come to your question about division.
Almost half the population here. That is a big number to say that I've just spoken of a dissenting policy.
There isn't half the population here, Sharon. The numbers there, I doubt. We have had a fresh election. That fresh election happened in 91% of the country. It did not happen in 3 odd counties, 3 odd as in the 4th county is partial. So 3,505 polling stations did not see an election,
right.
But 37,000 did. The question of why that happened is quite clear. There have been militia sponsored by Raila Odinga and his group that have been doing the rounds in Migori, in Kisumu, in Kawangware. We saw that last night.
Well, they're not here to defend themselves because the narrative from the other side would be different.
And they will. It's up to them. I have to tell you what the facts are. And those facts can be seen. You have people on the ground. You saw who was preventing ballot boxes from reaching polling stations. The Migori governor clearly said he locked them in a place. These things are not a question of the other side defending themselves. These things are verifiable.
And you say
and
this.
And all the things we say that are verifiable can be followed. What happens is that a leader is chosen on the basis of their policy. After they are elected, it is then time to steer the country forward on the basis of this is our policy. Of course, there is a question of inclusivity. Inclusivity is not about Raila Odinga. Inclusivity is about the framework.
It is about the people who have not turned out to vote. If we are looking at barely or just over 30% of registered voters who have gone to the ballot, and even if it's 99% of this 30% of voters are the ones who then will put President Uhuru Kenyatta into State House, how legitimate will that make the president feel?
What does the Constitution say about legitimacy? It says about 50% plus one. It says about 24 counties. It says nothing about the percentage of people that go to vote. But let me put this in perspective. Let me give you some history. Liberia had a repeat election, 25%. Ghana had a repeat election, 27%. Burkina Faso had a repeat election, 29%. Romania had an election without riots or blockages, without intimidation, 39%. Kosovo had an election, 41%. Sharon, this is not about who stays at home by their own volition, guaranteed by the Kenyan Constitution. This is about the people who exercise their right to vote. And those people are also guaranteed protection by the Kenyan Constitution.
Right, and you have mentioned that clearly inclusivity is important, but I've not mentioned exactly how you would intend then in your presidency to include the millions of Kenyans who did not go to the ballot, who do not consent to the way this election has taken place.
Millions didn't go to the ballot on August 8, obviously. And 4.4 million didn't go.
So then
those
how
people
do you tackle the inclusivity agenda?
Those 4.4 million have to be catered for. When the country moves forward. But in a democracy such as ours, it is the people who go to vote who determine who gets into office, not the people who stay at home. Point number one. Number two, we have the most robust constitution on this continent. I would dare say around the world. Devolution guarantees that funds reach mashinani, grassroots. So every region of this country has sufficient funds to deal with how they move forward. Secondly, from the national government, the president is quite clear about what his deliverables are. And he will continue to deliver that infrastructure, improved education. I mean, free secondary education is not going to happen in my village alone. It's going to happen everywhere in this country. And I haven't had a single parent, including those who were forced not to go to vote by militia, say that they don't want their kids in school free of fees.
All right, I know we have to go on break, but this question, I still am not satisfied with it. How high up in your priority is inclusivity in your agenda as Jubilee Party?
Always has been. That's why development for Jubilee has been nationwide, not regional.
All right, we shall continue with that discussion once we come back. We are taking a short break. I have State House spokesman Manoah Esipisu with me in studio. We have more to talk about.